Hello, I'm Christopher Bayliss from Fast Growth Services. Thank you for downloading the Fast Growth Workbook entitled Streamline Your Business Processes. I'm at the offices today of Richard Strong, who is the Managing Director of Caliva Process Solutions here in Dorset in England. Nice to be here. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Before we start with the hints and how to use this workbook, can you just explain to us what the main product of Caliva is, Richard?
Certainly. Caliva designs and manufactures specialised equipment for extrusion and spheronisation, the making of very small round pellets, predominantly for the pharmaceutical industry, but also in other industries such as ceramics and catalysts.
Okay. And again, in terms of context, how many employees and what's your turnover?
We're a small business of 10 people with approximately £1.2 million worth of turnover.
Okay, thank you. Okay, today is about streamline your business processes. And what I'm going to do now in the next couple of minutes is just talk about the thing in context and then give some hints. Okay, and I wanted an example of that everybody's heard of. And the company that I've chosen is Toyota, the car company. And there's a famous book written called The Toyota Way, which is on the Toyota production system. Okay. Now you might say, well, that's fine, but they're a huge company, manufacturing. We're not, we're service. Okay. Toyota have done extraordinarily well from applying this whole concept of streamlining processes in their business, haven't they? And if you're a service company, you might be thinking, well, how's that relevant to me? Can I ask you just to hold that side for us? This is the Daily Telegraph. This is yesterday's date. And just read what it says in the middle there, Richard.
Okay. A Japanese car factory transformed the culture of a Seattle hospital. Will the magic work on the NHS?
So Seattle is obviously in America. It's a small hospital. The NHS is one of the largest employers in the world with over 1 million employees and an annual budget of £200 billion. The worried looking gentleman there is the chief executive of the NHS, and he's worried because they're facing a shortfall of £4 billion. Why? Because with the increasing age of our population in Britain and long-term chronic diseases like dementia, his costs are going through the roof. And he wants to use and is using this Toyota production system, this process improvements, to make the whole NHS much more lean and effective. Make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Before we move on to the workbook itself, can you give me an example of how you've used this kind of thinking of flowcharting and mapping and in your own company?
Okay, well, I've been with Caliva for 2 years, and one of the first tasks was to look at the processes. So we mapped out the processes from inquiry review from a customer right the way through to invoicing, looked at what it entailed. It was very disjointed, it was very manual, so we very quickly decided to put an integrated system in. So for transactional work and also for recovery of data, it became much easier, much quicker, much more efficient.
And what impacts had that on the business?
It's had quite a profound impact, coupled with some streamlining of the products and the product ranges. We've been able to reduce our typical lead time from 10 weeks for a machine down to 2 weeks, so approximately 80% on average.
And how's that significant reduction impacted on the business?
Very well. On many occasions we know from customer feedback that the short lead time has won us the contract.
Wow. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing with us.
Pleasure.
Okay. Let's move on now to how to use this workbook. Very practical, very effective little workbook for you to use. So Richard, can you read the title page of this workbook for everybody, please?
Yes, of course. The Fast Growth Workbook for you to streamline your business processes. The purpose of this workbook is to assist you to identify one of your key business processes and then to streamline it. The goal is that within 6 months you successfully streamline several of your business processes to substantially increase the profitability of your company.
And what we're saying here, Richard, is in any typical business, whether it's manufacturing or service, there's probably 8 or 9 processes. Things like invoicing, sales process, service process, all those things, yes, as well as the overall process you talked about earlier on. And we encourage people to use once on a process and then do it on several other processes. Okay, so if you turn to page 1, why streamline a process? And I'll ask you to read number 1, please.
Okay, number 1, why streamline a business process? Your business is operating okay. The work is getting done, but you know your business isn't optimized. But so what? People often say, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Streamlining one of your business processes means finding and eliminating unnecessary waste, e.g. tasks, and ensuring that each step of your business process creates value to your customers. You often only need to streamline a few of your processes to make a big difference to your costs, productivity and profitability.
Good, great summary.
Says it all.
Says it all. Okay, so what we're saying is identify one of your processes. And that could be your process for handling sales inquiries, that's 2A, your marketing process, your invoicing and payment process, and your stock management process. So identify what the key processes are, and then identify the one where you think by mapping it or flowcharting it, and improving it, you would achieve some great improvements in productivity, etc. And to identify that at the bottom of the page. Do that yourself. You can do this yourself in about an hour, and then involve your team. So that's hint number 1. Just think about processes, think about one to identify, and just get cracking. Okay. Flowcharting processes. It's much easier than people think. There are templates for doing this, but you don't need to do that. It's basically very simple. Think about a process, and then, I don't know, any of those we just mentioned then, the sales inquiry process, and ask yourself, use these sort of post-its, and what is the first step in the process? Step 1, what is the first step? And just put it down on a post-it and say that's the first one. And then identify other steps in the process, logical steps, write them down. You can always get them down on paper, on post-its, and then just play around with them, and then what's the final step? I'm suggesting maybe 7 or 8 steps. Very visual, and again, if you're doing this with a team, you can use bigger post-its and a flip chart, a big flip chart, makes sense. So if you turn to page 3, there's an example of a template for using this. So this is here, instead of using a chart like that, use that one there, using post-its. Just list it. Okay? And then think about the problems you have at each stage. There may not be a problem at each stage, but there probably will be some problems. And list those on post-its. But also, then think about the opportunity for improving this step. Very simple. So, title of the process, who is the customer for this process, what's the value you're creating, all those things we just discussed. Just flowchart the process and look at where the problems can occur. If you need more than 5 steps, just photocopy it and do some more. It's as simple as that. I brought for you an example of one from a company. Can you just hold one end for me? This is a company that sells tractors. Okay, and here is their long process. These are the various steps in their process, and down here are the opportunities for improvement and all the problems in that step. Make sense? And then use that to think about where you can make improvements to the process and where you can make improvements in terms of reducing problems, etc. And I guess that's what you've been doing and have done quite a lot of it at Caliva.
Yes, it is, as a guide mapping the existing process and finding all the things that happen in that process not necessarily the things that are actually on an instruction, but what really happens is critical to the success of this.
Super. This is a two-part process. Part one is getting the order for the tractor, and part two, getting the machine to customer and getting paid. So you could argue that's one process and another process. Okay, very simple, very straightforward, very easy. And that's basically what Toyota did in terms of making cars a lot more, very efficiently and a lot cheaper than other competitors at the time. So key step is to actually just do it, just process flow it. And then finally, the third hint is on page 4A, Richard, is evaluate the critical problems and best opportunities. So you have a number of problems, but identify the critical problems. If you can just read the top of that page for us.
Your critical problem to overcome: loss, inefficiency resulting in loss of time or money; risk, potential risk caused by gaps in the process; and impact, the financial impact of the problem.
Okay, so you might have a number of problems, but which is the critical problem, and identify it, and then use that analysis. And then opportunity for improvement, which is also valuable. If you just read that for us.
Your best opportunity for improvement, benefit to gain from seizing this opportunity, and the impact, the financial impact of this gain.
And then at the very bottom there,
now decide your key changes for dealing with your critical problem and best opportunity. To do this, turn the page.
And it's mapped out there for you, how to make those changes. Very, very simple. This is the whole thing with this, is flowchart it.
It is very simple.
Yeah.
Very simple process, but very powerful.
Those are the three major tips. And usually I'm going to mention the final page, decide your next action, which is mainly just do it. But to further, having done it once, to further streamline your process, what are your immediate next actions? And then most importantly, Richard, to engage your team. If you've only got a couple of people in a small company, engage the whole team. Or if it's a larger company, it may be a functional team or maybe a management team, because two heads are always better than one. Richard, thank you very much for sharing with me your experiences with streamlining processes. Incredibly powerful. Where do you see the future in terms of what you can do with this kind of stuff at Caliva?
Well, I think it's a great first step in continuous improvement and going on to more sophisticated ways of improving your processes. And that's what we're trying to do. And we're instilling in people a culture that every process within the business can be improved. And it is a cultural change to get people to think that everything they do is a process. But once you've achieved that, the savings are very significant and very rewarding. Very rewarding.
Thank you for those insights. And may I wish you every success going forward.
Thank you.